Good day, everyone. Praise be Jesus and Mary. So today I will be discussing about communicative language teaching and task-based approach in teaching grammar. So task-based language teaching has the same several principles with communicative language teaching. So first, task-based language teaching is based on communication like in communicative language teaching. In communicative language teaching, communicative activities are used as a part of the lesson. In task-based language teaching, the tasks are used as a part of the lesson. So as you can see, there are actually a big differences between the two approaches. So now let's talk about the communicative language teaching. The origin of communicative language teaching are found in the changes in the British language teaching tradition in the late 1960s. Communicative approach aims to make communicative competence the goal of language teaching and develop procedures for the teaching of the four language skills, which includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing that acknowledge the interdependence of language and communication. So for the approach, we have the theory of language. The communicative approach is language teaching starts from a theory of language as communication. So the goal of language teaching is what Himes 1972 referred to as communicative competence. Himes coined this term in order to contrast communicative view of language and Chomsky's theory of competence. In Himes' view, a person who acquires communicative competence acquires both the knowledge and the ability for language use. So the communicative approach to the teaching of foreign languages, also known as communicative language teaching or communicative approach, emphasize learning a language through genuine communication. So this is based on the idea that learning language successfully comes through having to communicate real meaning in a context. When learners are involved in real communication, their natural strategies for language will be used. And this will follow, and this will allow them to use the language. So let's go to the two versions of the communicative language teaching. So number one, we have the weak version. So the weak version stresses the importance of providing learners with opportunities to use their English for communicative purposes. So basically, this is the learning to use the language English. So let's move on to strong version. So advances the claim that language is acquired through communication. That is not merely a question of activating an existing but inherent knowledge of language, but of stimulating the development of the language system itself, using English to learn it. Again, weak version, learning to use English, while strong version, using English to learn it. Okay, so let's move on to the sample activities of the approach. So we have from letters to grammar. So students will listen to a series of letters and then think of a meaningful phrase which uses each letters as the first letter of a word. The order in which they use the letters is not important. So for example, given ADIF, students might produce a day in France, fantastic dreams are incredible, I ate David's fruit. So students think of vocabulary first and then the grammar they need to make a phrase. So it becomes easier for students as they do more examples. So let's move on to numbers and sizes ratios. So this activity focuses on general knowledge and guessing numbers and size. So learning then have the chance to produce their own version of the activity. So put learners into groups. So this is how we are going to do it. First, we have to put learners into two groups of two or three. Second, learners look at comparisons on the board or in a handout and discuss how big the difference is between them. Third, then they match the comparison to a ratio. Then they write the sentence expressing the ratio. So for example, the world's tallest man is 2.5 meter tall. The world's shortest man is 0.5 meter tall. The ratio is 1 is to 5. So the world's tallest man is 5 times as tall as the world's shortest man. So students will need to research the answers using website in English. They can also do further research and compile their own ratios, which they then exchange with classmates to write further sentences. So the purpose of this activity is to get learners to think logically and critically, to use their general knowledge and to practice comparative forms. So we have question to question. Give students a jumbled dialogue like this. So Ali said, pretty good. Where are you going? I'm okay. What about you? I'm nosy. Can I come with you? What did you say? Weren't you listening? That's my secret. Why do you want to know? Hi Badra, how are you? Are you crazy? So this given dialogue are jumbled and then the students will going to put it in the correct order. So this is how they are going to do it. So Ali said, hello, how are you? What did you say? Weren't you listening? I said, how are you? I'm okay. What about you? Pretty good. Where are you going? That's my secret. Why do you want to know? I'm nosy. Can I come with you? Are you crazy? So that's they are going to do it. So um then they are going to create their own dialogues given the functional language they need. So I think this is very important because it teaches us the functional language. It teach the learners to to follow the order of the expressions like how people practice this one in everyday conversation and of course their intonation how they are going to to say it and and they are going to learn about the questioning the proper way of questioning and also as a confidence booster and to have fun with the rest of our classmates. So then get students to create their own dialogues having given the functional language they need. So first, they need to think of a content or situation. For example, parent and a child, husband and a wife. Then write the dialogue, then read it aloud or act it and act it out for their classmates to guess the context or the situation. So in the classroom, you are really need to give an assignment like this one so that this will um, you know create connections between the parents and their siblings. So basically this will give them um, the knowledge about the language. So let's move on to the alphabet dialogue. So students create a paired dialogue so that each line begins with the next letter of the alphabet. So example, Ahmed, how are you? Bad, really bad. Come on. It can't be that bad. Did you think I'm joking? Everyone knows you're a joker. You're a joker. So for higher level students, you would combine alphabet dialogue with question to question. And then the purpose of this activity is a warmer, a confidence booster to practice real-time speaking using colloquial language and to practice sentence starters. So next we have slow B. So in this activity, learners look at a text which contains nonsense words and try to make sense of it from a grammatical perspective. It is good for helping students with their decoding skills and gives great opportunities for creative language use. So example of a nonsense text. The slowly is a prompting syllable which stretches in a lion. It occurs from globally, exert in a frame. In order to name a slowly, the lion is larded by the thick froze liuder. So students need to identify parts of speech by looking at the word order. For example, prompting, thick froze might be adjectives. So they can discuss and justify their answers in a group. So alternatively, for lower students, you can give the students the words they have to substitute into text. So use these words: country, fish, dancing, rivers, river comes, Asia lives. So for that, so students will be putting the correct words of the and filling it to the nonsense words in the given um, text. So you can get students to create their own slowly for their classmates to solve by writing real sentences and then substituting some of the words for nonsense words. So again, the purpose of this activity is to practice guessing meaning from context, to identify parts of speech and to be creative. So identifying parts of speech here for this activity is really important because um, the teacher focuses on the grammar rules, particularly the functions of the word in a context. No? So let's move on to the task-based approach in teaching grammar. So task-based learning, one of the most talked about or recent methods, can be traced back in strong communicative approach, where teaching is done entirely through communicative tasks. So there is no set of grammar syllabus. Focusing on language use after a task has been completed is widely accepted as an aid to acquisition. So the task repetition gives students the chance to practice new language. So three theories of language learning are commonly cited as the basis for PBI. So according to task-based learning advocates, the approach meets the requirements of Krashen's input hypothesis by providing authentic input in the form of oral or written test related to specific tasks. It addresses Swain's output hypothesis by providing opportunities for learners to produce meaning focused output, and it satisfies the term of long interaction hypothesis by fostering negotiation of meaning among learners. So the task-based language learning, or TBLL, also known as task-based language teaching or task-based instruction, focuses on the use of authentic language and on asking students to do meaningful tasks using the target language. Such tasks can include visiting a doctor, conducting an interview, or calling a customer service for help. So assessment is primarily based on task outcome. In other words, the appropriate completion of tasks rather than an accuracy of language forms. This makes the TBLL especially popular for developing target language fluency for the student confidence. So tasks. The students complete a task in pairs or group using the language resources that they have as the teacher monitors and offers encouragement. So we have planning. Students prepare a short oral or written report to tell the class what happened during their task. By then, they then practice what they are going to say in their groups. Meanwhile, the teacher is available for students to ask for advice to clear up any language question they may have. So for the report, students then report back to the class orally or read the written report. So the teacher chooses the order of when students will present the reports and may give students some quick feedback on the content. So at this stage, the teacher may also play a recording of others doing the same task for the students to compare. That's report. So for the analysis, the teacher then highlights relevant parts of the text of the recording of students to analyze. They may ask students to notice interesting features within this text. So the teacher will also highlight the language that students use during the report phrases for analysis. Practice. Finally, the teacher selects language areas to practice based upon the needs of the students and what emerged from the task and the report phrases. So the students then do practice activities to increase their confidence and make a note of useful language. So that's practice wherein you are putting your learners to the real context in which they are going to practice their language communication. So for sample activities, first we have information gap activities, which actually involves the transfer of information from one person to another, from one form to another, or from one place to another. For example, two students might have different schedules, but they want to find time to get together to have tea. They need to get relevant information from each other to determine when they are both free as well as when they are available times coincide with when a tea house is open. Second, reasoning gap activities are those in which you ask your students to derive some information from that which you give them. They are required to comprehend and convey information much as in an information gap activity. But the information that they are asked to convey is not exactly the same that they comprehend. For example, you might ask your students to make a decision between speed and cost or cost and quality, given a certain situation and various constraints. So let's move on to opinion gap activities. So are those that ask students to convey their own personal preferences, feelings, or ideas about particular situation. On a higher level, you might ask them to take part in a discussion or a debate about political or social issue. On a lower level, you might ask them to complete a story. So in these types of activities, there is no right or wrong answer, and therefore there is no objective means by which a judge outcomes outside of whether what the students do or say address the task at hand. You might require them to speak or write for a certain amount words of or time, and you might ask them to use certain instructions. Otherwise, assessment is subjective rather than objective. So that's how opinion gap activity works. So let's go to road trip. So for this activity, you should have enough maps for each group in the class. At the beginning of the class, you should ask each group what information they need from you in order to plan the perfect trip. So this might include the number of days you wish to travel, your budget, and what you like to do while you are on the road or in your free time. So once your students have this information, set them loose with their maps and give them time to, to plan the trip. So when they are done, have them present their trip to the entire class. Your class as a whole can now vote on which trip you are going to take. Of course, they should be able to explain why they made the choice that they made, especially if they chose trip rather than one under group created for you. So basically, that's how road trip work. So let's go to the information gap. So this activity requires students to go around and talk to his or her classmates to know the whole information. The students will have information, and then they have to work together to get the complete picture. So this is done by talking and meeting all of their classmates to get the information that they have to make it a whole. So this activity is going to be fun and interactive as well because they are going to follow the task-based approach since they have the purpose on why they are mingling with their classmates. So I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening.